The Eggshell Road. Prologue: The Squirrel's Leap. Long before humans traversed deserts, another creature faced a daunting distance. A squirrel jumped from branch to branch. Another jumped even further. Another further yet. Another followed, only to tumble. Yet they continued to leap. It wasn't a single extraordinary squirrel that altered its kind's fate. It was a small group, leaping for nourishment, safety, or perhaps sheer excitement. Together, they inspired one another to go even further. This became their path of evolution. Each jump was a choice, and every setback became a lesson. Over time, they figured out how to gain more air, extend their bodies, and adjust their descents. They shared increasingly less with their progenitors. A new journey lay before them. Evolution is not simply the victory of a solitary mutant. An individual adapts, survives, and can reproduce. However, a species only evolves when a collective decides on a direction and propels itself toward it. The squirrels mastered the skies not by chance, but through shared practice. Their destination wasn't solely inscribed in their genes, it was defined by their collective choices. And Scene 1, the receding waterhole, 60,000 BCE near Diepkloof Rock Shelter, South Africa. The waterhole began to diminish, then disappeared entirely. Where a shallow surface once mirrored the dawn, a small wet patch of sand remained. As they clawed into the wet sand, the water was so close they could feel it. Thirst clawed at them, momentarily resting and feeling as if the earth had betrayed them. Then they saw it. The hole where they were digging was filling up with water. They began to scrape at the sand. The walls crumbled, but with persistent digging, water eventually seeped back. For now, their bare hands sufficed. For now, they endured. Scene 2, Bones and Shells. Suns rose and fell. The water lay deeper, unreachable with hands alone. They resorted to what they possessed. Bones from past hunts and shards of ostrich eggshells. Bones scraped, but their weight and dullness hindered progress. The eggshells proved lighter, sharper, and easier to manage. Soon, bones were disregarded. The ostrich shell evolved into more than sustenance. It became a tool. With it, they could dig deeper and quicker. Water once again surfaced. And Scene 3, Settling the Mud. Initially, they drank muddy, gritty water. It was choking and unpalatable. Then someone realized, if water rested in a large shell fragment, the sediment settled. The surface cleared. Patience transformed mud into clear water. The shell became a vessel, not merely a scoop. This marked their first lesson in waiting, letting time work wonders. The first step from desperation to foresight. Scene 4, Lining the Well. Over the years, the waterhole grew deeper. Each visit caused the walls to crumble more easily. Across generations, a new concept took root. They embedded ostrich shell fragments into the well's walls. Initially, it aimed merely to support their digging. But soon, they noticed the beneficial effect. The walls held firm. The water remained accessible longer. This was no longer mere improvisation, it became engineering. The well was remembered and revisited season after season. Scene 5, The Whole Egg. Generations later, another leap occurred. The ostrich egg was no longer just a fragment. Someone pricked a small hole in an intact shell, filled it with water, and sealed it. Now water became portable. The well was no longer their sole source. Its bounty could be transported. Hunters could depart with whole shells, bury them while en route, and reclaim them later. The ostrich egg became the first genuine container, portable, durable, storable. This marked the transition from mere survival to logistics. Scene 6, The Problem of Distance. The wells provided water, and the shells transported it. However, the herds remained distant. 3 days' journey through the desert. The challenge was not the outward journey, but the return. A hunter could only carry so much. If he drank excessively, he might not survive the return. Conversely, if he drank too little, he might collapse before reaching his target. The desert imposed limits. Each step outward needed a matching step back. Scene 7, the first fraction. A guiding principle emerged. Travel until half your water has been consumed if you have found no other water return. This represented the first lived fraction. They didn't articulate halves or ratios. They sensed it through the shell's weight, the water's slosh, and the dryness in their mouths. Not all could carry 2 shells on a hunt. Some won, some none. After close calls, to maintain the half rule, they all drank from the same shell and drank one at a time. When there was a full shell for every empty shell, it was time to go home. Sometimes there was the final shell. When it was half gone, they would go home. When that would happen, they would laugh because it was a real half. Scene 8, running totals. One journey resulted in a shell buried. Another trip left another shell. The desert evolved into a ledger. They began to tally, not through numbers, but through memories, notches, and rhythm. 4 journeys yielded 4 shells. 2 could be carried further, leaving 2 behind. Division became sharing. If 8 shells were hidden and 4 hunters arrived, each would drink 2. The desert itself transformed into the first blackboard. Fractions, multiplication, division, all experienced through shells, sand, and thirst. Scene 9, the first expedition. The corridor of shells stood ready. Wells were lined, caches buried. Fractions lived in each step taken. 4 hunters set forth together. At the first cache, they quenched their thirst. At the second, they replenished their supplies. At the third, they buried extra shells for their return journey. Finally, they arrived at the hunting grounds. They rested, drank, and then set out to hunt. The weight of the kill was significant, yet the shell corridor guided them home. Each cache represented a promise upheld. Every fraction, every tally, every buried egg became proof of survival. To Chapter 10, Parallels. The squirrels leaped higher, failing and learning until gliding became their skill. Humans did likewise. They ventured into the desert, faltering and evolving, leading to the emergence of mathematics, not from symbols, but from thirst, fairness, and foresight. Both narratives reveal a core truth. Adaptation originates in behavior, later validated in physical forms. The squirrels mastered the skies by leaping in unison. The people conquered the desert by caching collectively. Evolution isn't solitary, it's social. It embodies the mastery of constraints shared across time. It's an epilogue. Fractions, multiplication, division, speech, and foresight all arose not in abstraction, but from thirst, fairness, and patience. The desert served as the first classroom. The ostrich egg acted as the initial textbook. From shells and sand emerged the foundations of mathematics. From voices and vocal cords came the beginnings of language. Both were foresight tools, uniting individuals into a cohesive group. With these tools, humanity commenced its journey not just across deserts, but into the future. This story is not meant as a precise history. It conforms to a mathematical model that I used to make a point. Still, I've always liked the idea of the sand well. It is also the family version. There would have been trial and error would have been devastating. Their first math was probably wrong, but it still had to be sufficient for survival. The further they wished to extend their reach, the more precise they would have to become. What I find inconceivable is the idea that when they buried a shell, that they wouldn't need to report. The weight of a shell was our first scalable measurement. Math was required to evolve the use of that tool. We got these brains for a reason. I'd like to leave you with a thought on genetic Eve. She doesn't have to be the last woman alive. It could be that the knowledge needed to survive needed to be taught from a young age. With early learning being crucial, that knowledge might have only properly passed down the maternal line. Only her daughters and granddaughters could raise a child who could survive as part of that clan. That is one of many possibilities, but I like it because it preserves the possibility of Adam. I am, after all, a Christian. And is it not the fruit of knowledge that we discuss? Thank you for watching The Eggshell Road. If you enjoyed it and wish to support my work, please like my video and subscribe to my channel.